Can you text me the link to the YouTube? On YouTube, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to watch it. I was going to send it to somebody. Yeah. Don't know. We've been live for 30 seconds. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Catch Lift Coaches Corner. I'm Tyler Gant. I'm joined by Melissa Luke. This week we have a really, really awesome veteran on.
Thanks, Tyler. This week we're lucky to sit down with Catch the Lift veteran and U.S. Army veteran Jason Livingston. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
So I'm Jason Livingston. I'm one of the coaches with Catch a Lift. I've been with Catch a Lift now for, I think, about 4 or 5 years now, something like that. So I came into Catch a Lift. I was originally in a wheelchair and told that I'd never walk unassisted again. My highest weight, I was about 270, 280, somewhere around in there. And I got linked up with Catch a Lift. And, eventually it just kind of progressed into making those hard stand choices and choosing to better myself. So I've been out of a wheelchair for about 3.5 years now. I've been walking unassisted for about 2.5, 3 years. And then, of course, I had the awesome opportunity about a year ago to become one of the coaches with Catch a Lift. And I've been enjoying every minute of it, getting to work with the great coaches that we have and helping our veterans.
That's awesome, dude.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jason. Why don't let's take a look at kind of where your journey started when you came home, Jason, and let's look at that before picture slide. All right, so, let's dive right in, Jason, and start, getting into this. What did the early days look like? And, what kind of got you to really start pushing forward? And, you had this goal, you wanted to walk again.
So kind of the early stages of this was honestly a little bit of tough love for my wife. Dealing with PTSD, depression, anxiety, stress, all of that kind of rolled into one. My wife eventually pulled me to the side and she said, "Look, I don't care what you do. You need to figure out some way to fix yourself. You need to figure out some way to control this." And that's where I started my journey with Catch a Lift, in part. The other part of that was, so early on, I was actually in a wheelchair, and my daughter, she was about 3 or 4 years old, and she started drawing pictures of us, the family, me and her, and she started drawing pictures of me with my cane and my crutches and in a wheelchair. And then it came to the point where she was drawing herself with a cane or in a wheelchair, and she kept asking me when she was going to get a wheelchair. And, for me as a dad, that really hit really hard, because I don't want my daughter to think that that's how you're supposed to live. I made the choice to better myself. I made the choice that I didn't want my daughter to see me like that, and I wanted to be there for my family. So that's kind of the two-part factor there that made me make those changes, that made me work, push hard, and drive forward to walk, to just move, honestly.
That's got to be tough, deal with that specific type of, family issue right there of teaching your little ones, this isn't where you're going. This isn't what you're going to have to deal with. And really explaining that to them. I couldn't fathom that, man. That in itself's got to be a whole nother something to deal with other than just the injury.
It was, to the point where, she was looking at me. I mean, your kids look at you for guidance. They look at you for, a role model, an example. And I couldn't see myself at 30-some years old accepting the fact of somebody telling me that I'm going to be in a wheelchair and that I'm never going to walk unassisted again. To me, that was letting the enemy, injure me all over again. That was giving them control back. And I couldn't take that. I couldn't take going through that again in front of my family. Dealing with PTSD is hard enough. Dealing with TBI is hard enough. But dealing with those walking wounds that you come home with, that not everybody sees all of those underlying issues. I couldn't sit by the wayside and just kind of waste away, because that's what I felt like I was doing in a wheelchair.
Right.
Yeah.
And you said before you were like 270 in the wheelchair?
About 270, 280, somewhere around in there.
And what are you down to now?
Uh,
My weigh-in yesterday, I'm down to 190.
Let's
Wow.
let's take a look at some of those after pictures of you lifting now, Jason, because you have had just, an incredible transformation. So let's start a little bit, maybe let's look at that nutrition. Nutrition is such a hurdle for so many of our veterans. And you really started from this place of, well, let's talk about that. Where did you start with the nutrition? You're sitting at 270, 280. How do you tackle that?
So coming into Catch a Lift, not really caring how I ate. I was smashing down, a double cheeseburger, Big Mac, 2 or 3 from McDonald's, and fries, and 2 or 3 32-ounce cups of Coke afterwards, or a double package of Oreos. It was just a free for all, because one part of PTSD and TBI that you get is depression, and a lot of people, they emotionally eat as a way to make themselves feel better. And that's how a lot of veterans kind of start down that road. And that's what I did. I felt bad about myself. I felt bad because I was in a wheelchair. I felt bad because I wasn't there for my family. And the coping mechanism that I used was to eat pretty much anything and everything. It didn't really matter. So, one of the things early on that I learned, and that I really try to kind of pull back on, is drinking soft drinks, sugar sodas, sports drinks, things like that. What people don't really realize is how much sugar is actually in those. So, a 20-ounce bottle of Coke is roughly equal to the amount of sugar in about 8 Krispy Kreme donuts. So, if you're drinking one of those, you just had 8 donuts.
Yeah.
And then most of the time, whenever you're in a restaurant, you have, 3 or 4 glasses of soda at a time. So it just kind of adds up and adds up. So the easiest thing that I started doing was really controlling that. And, it went from, I had maybe a soda at dinner time, and the rest of it was water or, iced tea, something like that, that had very little to no sugar at all. And then, of course, adding in more nutrient-dense foods. So that was kind of an interesting transition in itself, because my wife, she actually had a lap band. So she had a device in there that restricted the size of her stomach.
Yeah.
So we had to make some changes dietarily, nutritionally for her needs, which ultimately affected the entire family. So we had to limit sugars, we had to limit carbohydrates, we had to limit fat, and take an overall healthier approach at what we ate and what we didn't. Which overall, I think the first year and a half that I was in Catch a Lift, I ended up dropping maybe, I think it was about 50 pounds, roughly, just by cutting out soda, eating a little bit healthier, and increasing my activity level.
So you were able to right away, take it as a situation. All right, what can I do right now? I can cut out some of these soft drinks, and like right there, you were doing yourself, a great favor, and to build on that. The other thing that I think is really important to kind of touch on too, or just circle back, this was a whole family effort. This wasn't just you, Jason, going your own way. this was your whole family. You know, you guys really, really changed what you were doing. You know, that's, I think, we can really see success when it's a whole family going after something like that. You know, when it's just one individual, it definitely gets tricky.
Yeah, it's, you know, whenever it comes to changing nutrition, it really is a whole family thing. And that's actually been a huge part of my success, is bringing my entire family in. And then, about 18 months ago now, my wife, she actually had a full gastric bypass. So the lap band device actually, it shifted on her stomach. So they had to go in and they did an emergency surgery to remove the device. And so I actually went through the entire procedure with my wife. I went through all the classes for her pre-op surgery. I did her pre-op diet with her to support her. Wow. And, you know, I continue to support her after her surgery. So we have her down about 160 pounds right now in total. And so it's nutrition is something that we deal with every day as a family. Anybody who has a gastric bypass, it is 100% hard work all the time. It's not something where you have the surgery and then boom, you're skinny, you lost all this weight. Yeah. It takes a lot of work, nutritionally and physically as well. So
you've got to change your whole lifestyle essentially after that.
Yeah, we changed everything, how we eat, when we eat, what we eat, everything. So most of our produce, especially from spring to late fall, we actually grow here at our house. And then so we have, you know, whole vegetables, fruits, whole protein sources. So that's it. That's all. That's the magic key to anything diet, nutrition, long-term sustainability, is nutrient dense foods, whole vegetables, whole protein sources, whole fruits, grains, and that's the magic. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. So for some of those that may not know, what are some examples of like your kind of favorite nutrient dense foods?
Oh man, there's so many to choose from. Yeah. So every day like clockwork, my breakfast consists of 200 grams of rolled oats with cinnamon, and I'll have berries of some sort, blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, something like that in my oatmeal. And then I'll do a whole egg omelet, so anywhere from 3 to 5 eggs, depending on what my activity is going to be that day. Yeah. And then I'll have in the omelet spinach, peppers, tomatoes, mushrooms, onion, you know, whatever. I like spicy food, so I'll throw some jalapenos or something in there. So that's a pretty much a overall typical breakfast. Spinach is awesome because you have protein, you have fiber, you have, you know, phytonutrients that go in there with that. Yep. That just make it a great nutrition profile. And whole eggs. I don't shy away from eating just egg whites or, you know, anything like that. I eat the whole egg. Yeah. So you get all the nutrients from that. Peppers, tomatoes, you know, high in vitamin C, you know, vitamin A, all that good stuff. So really it's just whatever I can throw in there as far as vegetable wise, you know, I'm throwing it in there.
Pretty much if it grows out of the ground, it's going
pretty
in
much. if it flies, swims, or walks, it's on my table. And if it's green and comes out of the ground, I'm gonna eat it.
Cool.
What about, so, you know, we're getting some questions going through. Do you still take any time? Is there ever McDonald's that Jason Livingston stops at anymore? You know, do you ever do McDonald's anymore? Do you ever have your times where you go back, you know, Oreos, chips, anything like that? Or is that stuff in the past for you? Kind of, what's that look like?
So that's an interesting question. My son actually, he goes to the Citadel down in Charleston, which is a 4-hour drive. So we, you know, drive back and forth from Greenville to Charleston quite a bit whenever they're actually in school. Of course, COVID kind of put a stop to all that. But we do travel. And there are times where you have to eat out just because of your schedule. Yeah. But the easiest thing that I've found to do is, you know, we make smart choice where we eat. One, because of my wife, she can't have certain foods. Grease, fat is a no-go for her. So it's all about making those proper choices. So if I do go someplace, say Five Guys, I'll get a cheeseburger or a hamburger with ketchup, mustard, and have it on lettuce instead of a bun, and skip the fries. Or if you go to Chick-fil-A, get a grilled chicken salad instead of a chicken sandwich. It's making those swap out choices. And when it comes to losing weight, you have to take those hard stand choices. You have to make that decision that this is the goal that I want. This is what I want. I have to lose weight. This may taste great, but I'm going to feel a whole lot better whenever I drop 50 pounds. Now on the other side,
you have to eat food to do that.
Correct.
That's the biggest thing. I've talked to so many people. It was probably 3 or 4 months ago. I was talking to a friend of mine's mom, and she was asking me questions about like losing weight and getting healthier. And she said, "I just don't understand it. I've been dieting for 6 months and I haven't lost any weight." And I said, "Well, how much are you eating a day?" And she said, "Well, I'm eating about 800 calories a day."
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus Christ, that's why you're not losing weight. Like,
now,
you got to eat more.
You can lose weight that way. I know I've talked to you about this before in the past, Melissa. So when I was in Baghdad, a friend of mine and I, we went to the gym every day. We did cardio, we did weightlifting. But because of mission sets and everything else, we were lucky to get in a meal a day. So I went from 190 pounds all the way down to 150 pounds. And I actually ended up losing a lot more lean muscle mass. But Tyler, you're absolutely right. You actually eat more whenever you are dieting than you did before.
Yeah.
Hands down. I eat more now.
That's always my biggest problem is, so I've cut weight a few times for competitions, and that's always my biggest complaint is it's too much damn food.
It is.
It's way too much damn food. Like, I go from eating, 4 or 5 times a day comfortably to eating 2 or 3 whole food meals a day. And then I have to make the rest up in shakes because I'm so full all the damn time.
Yeah. I know for me, whenever I went on to my last bulk, actually, I had to be up by 7:00 every day to start eating. And I ate pretty much constantly throughout the day. And, about a month in, I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't keep doing this. I mean, I was just too full. It was so much food.
Yeah.
But that's where it comes into learning how to manipulate your macros, your protein, your fat, your carbs, which, kind of brings me to another point of, being smart whenever it comes to loading your carbs up. If you're going on a 2-3 hour drive, it doesn't make sense to smash down about 70 grams of carbs in one sitting.
Yeah.
And you're more likely to fall asleep during your drive.
Totally.
So I usually carb load before and right after my training session. That way I have fuel for my actual workout, and then I have fuel again after my workout to recover.
Yeah. That blows people's minds.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 times last week that I had that argument with somebody of you need carbs and protein post-workout, not just protein.
Yeah, because you actually deplete your glucose level, your glycogen level drops down because you've used all that during your workout.
If you've worked out hard enough,
Correct.
If you've properly trained, So
so you actually have to eat and consume carbohydrates afterwards to help repair your muscle, restore your energy, and to recover. And that's one of the biggest things when it comes to lifting is getting in that good nutrition and recovering as well. It helps with delayed onset muscle soreness. It helps you recover. It helps you get your energy back. Because 9 times out of 10, whenever somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to go on a diet," first thing I think of is they grab the trash can, they go into their pantry, and they just rake the shelf off and they throw everything
Yep.
off, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna get all this healthy stuff and I'm gonna eat it. And, you know, it's going to be great. And I'm going to drop 100 pounds in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be thin. And I'm going to be beach ready. And, you know, it's a lot more than that. It takes more time. It's, you know, everything with fitness and nutrition is a marathon. It's never a sprint. And, you know, if you do start to drop weight too fast, you're actually going to, you know, end up losing lean muscle mass versus fat. And then whenever you go back to eating correctly, you're actually going to pack on more body fat than you had before.
Yeah, you're going to screw your BMI.
Yeah. How do you kind of approach that from a mental standpoint when you know that, right, you know, the answer isn't just going in your pantry, clearing everything out, you know, throwing away all your food and, right, 2 weeks you're beach ready. Knowing that this is, you know, looking at more as like a marathon and not a sprint. I mean, how do you kind of mentally cope with that when you see this long road and know it's not going to be fast, you know, be it with your nutrition goals or your fitness goals?
Well, for me, it's simple. It's a simple answer for me. So I know that if I stop working out, if I stop exercising, if I stop controlling my nutrition because of my spinal injuries, I'm going to end up back in a wheelchair. That's hands down what I've been told by the doctors, what I've been told by physical therapists. You know, this is a lifelong journey for me. And it should be for all of our veterans. It should be a lifelong journey to continuously seek self-improvement. That's one takeaway that I took away from, you know, being a squad leader, was, you know, I was always told by my platoon sergeants, always continuously seek self-improvement. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that should be a goal of all of our veterans. So like I said, it's simple for me. If I stop, I'm going to end up back in a wheelchair. So there are those times, there are those days whenever I'm dragging ass and I don't really want to do my workout. I don't want to stick to my nutrition plan. So I have my wheelchair here in my gym, in my garage. And every time that I feel myself slacking off, I will set my wheelchair up in front of where I'm working out. So every rep I do, I have to stare at that chair and look at it every single rep so that I know if I quit, if I give up, then I'm going back in that chair. Right. And I absolutely refuse to go back in a chair ever. I mean, they're going to have to strap me down to it to keep me in it. That's the mentality that you have to have.
Yeah.
One of our veterans, Jason, that's watching today, you know, he says, you know, he takes what you're saying very seriously. He's had doctors say to him, you know, his problems are going to only continue to get worse. They're lifelong. It's deflating to him. You know, what can you kind of tell a veteran that's feeling that, you know, they're being told by that medical doctor, you know, this is what you've been dealt, you know?
Honestly, the honest, brutal answer to that is I say, fuck the doctors. Point blank, simple. I never let anybody else tell me what I can and can't do. Mm-hmm. You may not be able to do what it is that you want to do, or, you know, how you normally did it, but there's a way to do what you need to do. Yep. You just have to find it. You have to find a way. And that's how I started, you know, when it came to working out. So, you know, I was in my wheelchair. I'd roll myself out to my garage, and I started with, you know, a 5-pound dumbbell. I started with an empty bar. I started with no weight at all and working on that one rep every single time. And then whenever it came to actually getting up and walking, I started walking. You know, I'd get up from my couch and I'd walk, you know, the 10 foot to my you know, kitchen to get a drink. And then next time I try and push myself a little bit further and then a little bit further. So it's taking those steps little by little, you know, just continuously adding to that. But I never let anybody dictate to me what I can and can't do. And that's the mentality that you have to have. Those are the things that you have to tell yourself. You have to change your internal dialogue from, I can't do this. I can't do 20 push-ups. You have to change that dialogue and say, I can't do 20 push-ups right now, but I can do 5. It's changing that mentality. Yeah. It's taking that back and you know, making that decision to go down that road. You know, it kind of boils down to, you kind of have to hate yourself a little bit to make these hard changes, because, you know, in those you know, early before pictures, I told you before we got on here, that's the first time I've seen them since they were taken. And some of the other ones, I mean, you can actually see the look of disgust on my face with myself. You can see the unhappiness. So you have to have just a little bit of self-hate to make yourself improve.
Yeah. If you're content with who you are or what you are, you're not going to change.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to. There has to be some
Absolutely.
fucking dissatisfaction there. Like, you can't just be cool with being fat and then just all of a sudden, well, I'm going to get in shape tomorrow, you know?
Yeah.
And actually do a lifelong change out of it. Yeah, that's 100% accurate. And I agree with you, Jason. Fuck the doctors. I had so many naval docs when I was in the Marine Corps, like after my knee injury, that were like, you can't do this, and you can't touch a barbell, and you can't do that. And the human body is not designed to pick up this much weight, and da da da. And you have to have that no fuck you mentality of like, no fuck you, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And you know, it's ridiculous how a lot of doctors out there, I'm not gonna say every one of them, because I've met some actually cool doctors that are intelligent with athletes, but a lot of the doctors out there think that their medical degree is more than just medicine, and they think that they can tell you what your body is supposed to do, and that they know what your body is supposed to do. Only you know what your body can do and what it won't do, because you're the one that makes the decision on what it will and won't do.
And that's one thing that we all have in common as veterans is we have been taught how to push ourselves past what is normally comfortable. You know, for me, Afghanistan, whenever I first showed up, I mean, the first 2 or 3 patrols I went out on, I felt like my lungs were on fire because of the change in elevation, you know, climbing up and down mountains and everything else. Mm-hmm. You know, and so, I mean, we learn how to push past those comfort zones, and that's what you have to do. I mean, for me, I've got 3 herniated discs in my cervical spine. I have a lower lumbar L5-S1 herniation, and I should have a bilateral knee replacement. But you know, those are that's just the tip of the iceberg. And actually, right before we got on this morning, I was doing a 120-pound single arm barbell row. I was doing ollie lifts. I was doing hang clean to press. The other day, I hit 365 for a deadlift. You know, I'm back up to where I was. I was in a car accident last May, so that kind of took me down a little bit. So I'm back up to lifting heavy again and pushing towards my goal of 500-pound deadlift. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you can't let others dictate what it is that you're going to do, or, you know, tell you, hey, you can't do this, because there's always a way. There's always a way to do what you want to do.
That's absolutely true. There's always a path. It's just whether or not you're going to hammer it out. So you mentioned before about nutritional timing.
Yes.
Let's just hit on that real quick, because I feel like there's always that argument of it doesn't matter when you eat, as long as you get all your macros in, or versus, you know, you need to be on a structured timeline of, you know, when you're eating your meals.
Well, you know, that's always a, you know, kind of murky waters right there. And what I say to that is it really is based off of your goals. So if you are working on dropping weight, you know, obviously you want to have, you know, steady nutrition throughout the day, because you don't want to go into those times where, you know, you push yourself to being so hungry that you just eat and eat and eat and eat, because that leads to overeating. Mm-hmm. So I've found for me, whenever it comes to actually losing weight, it's a lot easier to stay more on, I wouldn't say a full-on structured diet or nutrition plan. So what I do is, you know, I try to eat around the same times, you know, try to keep things simple. So nutritional timing you want to make sure that you have all the energy that you need going into a workout. So the last thing you want to do is come into a heavy leg day, and you didn't have food beforehand, so you have no fuel, and now you have no energy to complete your workout. So you're 2 or 3 sets in, and your energy is just dropping off, and you don't want to complete your workout. So you want to come into a workout fueled and ready to go. And so I use a lot of mental imagery for myself. So I always think about this, for fuel, you want to have those good carbohydrates. So for me, I train, kind of late morning, early afternoon. So that's why I have oatmeal, because it's a complex carbohydrate. It takes a little bit longer for your body to process it down.
So that'd be a good pre-workout carb.
Then. Versus, if you have, say you have a bowl of Fruit Loops, to me, I look at stuff like that when it comes into energy consumption. If you've ever seen a Christmas tree go up, in flames after Christmas, is set there and is dried out for 30, 40 days, and a spark hits it and it's gone in like 2 seconds. That's what the fuel source is when it comes to simple carbohydrates. So you always want to have some good complex carbohydrates to give you sustained energy. So like I said, oatmeal is good for that. Rice is good for that. Fruit is another good one. I would say with fruit, just make sure that you're watching your overall sugar intake. Fruit does have, fiber and all that stuff, and it gets processed a little bit slower. But I try to limit the overall amount of sugar that I'm consuming throughout the day. I save all the sugar that I can for all of my meals instead of just one breakfast with pancakes and syrup. I mean, it sounds great, but I know that I need those carbs. I need those energy sources throughout the day.
Yeah.
So
Julian Torres has a question about. We've already kind of answered half of it. He asked, "What is a good carb for post workout?" Which obviously oatmeal, rice, and such is good for pre workout. That slow uptake. What would you say is a good post?
So for post workout, I read an article on this. I think it was last week. White rice is kind of like a topic of debate. White rice versus brown rice.
Yeah.
So the article that I read said that actually white rice helps protein consumption because brown rice has a phytonutrient in there that kind of blocks protein synthesis.
Mm-hmm.
So things like white rice and whole protein and vegetable, you get your carbohydrates from the rice, and then from vegetables, and then your whole protein source. So for me, what a post workout looks like is I'll usually have a protein shake right after I'm done, and then I'll consume a solid meal about an hour after that. So your good carbohydrates, your whole protein sources, and vegetables. That's one of the things that a lot of people fail to add in there is vegetables. You need those phytonutrients. You need those minerals and those vitamins to help recover. And the best source for them is vegetables. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever tried to eat 2.5 cups of broccoli in one sitting, that's pretty rough.
Sucks.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah. You don't want to go that road.
Yeah, it does suck. And like what you said about you do a protein shake post workout.
Yes.
We just had another question that came in that are protein shakes really necessary? And I would say that depends on what you're doing and what your goals are. But you could have, so like when I cut for competitions, I usually do a really high protein, like super low fat type of diet where I'm pretty much eating a lot of chicken and fish and a little bit of red meat with a shitload of vegetables.
Yep.
That is really, really hard to do because That's a lot of meat. I mean, I'm a 240-pound dude, so when I'm cutting, I'm usually hitting around somewhere between 2 and 2.5 pounds of meat a day,
Yeah.
which sucks. So I supplement that with 2 types of protein shakes. One's just a whey isolate protein shake that's kind of a slower uptake. It's a slower breakdown on the protein, so it lasts longer, burns slower. And I use a hydrolyzed whey isolate for my post workout because it's already the proteins in it are already pre-broken down and they uptake a little bit faster. So I don't know what kind of proteins you do post workout, but I do like the hydrolyzed whey isolate mixed with a carb supplement.
So for me, I've used different ones. I have a particular brand that I'm fond of, and it's a whey. It's a whey protein with casein protein, because the whey protein it's your quick absorb. So usually between 15 to 20 minutes, it's in your blood, or it's in your system, and then casein. It takes a little bit longer to break down. So it's kind of like if you I mean, everybody's had cottage cheese, so it's kind of the same thing. That's what's in casein protein. It has those essentially the globs of protein that break down little by little. So you get more of a extended protein breakdown. So you have your quick uptake, and then you have the casein followed up with the slower uptake. So again, it really just depends on your goals as far as what you put into your body. Obviously, solid food is the best form of nutrition.
Whole foods all the time.
But whenever you need to, you can supplement with a protein supplement. The one thing that I would definitely say about that is you get what you pay for when it comes to protein.
Yep.
I've read countless articles and medical studies and everything else on protein, how much you should intake. A lot of protein manufacturers will actually nitrogen spike the protein, so it gives it a false reading. So it may say that it's 20 grams of protein, but that's not necessarily what it is, because you have all the proprietary blends of whey, soy, egg white protein, all that other stuff that they can mix in there to make whatever. So you never know what it actually is. So I would
and they don't have to tell you.
I would advise if you are buying a protein supplement, to do a little bit of research, find out exactly what's in there, make sure this is the best that you can buy for yourself on your budget. I don't ever recommend one brand over the other. It's whatever that you can best afford, but just make smart decisions when it comes to that.
And don't skimp.
Yeah.
So Jason, I want to transition here a little bit and talk about deep core training with you.
Awesome.
This is something, you and I have talked about extensively over the past year, and it affects a lot of our veterans. So many of our veterans coming in, one of the number one complaints, low back pain. Let's talk about that a little bit. And let's talk about actual core training, but not just what we're thinking about, a 6-pack on the beach. Let's talk about deep core training.
Absolutely. Everybody always, all the veterans that I ever talk to, we all kind of have the same issues as far as low back pain, knee pain, hip pain. All that is kind of correlated to a weak core or weak glutes and hips, and it's all connected right there. So it goes past that lovely 6-pack that everybody wants to have. That's great. That's great. But you can achieve that 6-pack look through dieting. But what you're getting at, Melissa, is that inner core support that you have, which it actually incorporates your spine. It incorporates your diaphragm. It incorporates the underlying muscle tissue that you have there. So you have to actually work that and strengthen that to help support your spine. I guess the easiest way to look at it is our body is great at adapting. And what the way it adapts is, so whenever one muscle hits failure, your body naturally recruits the other muscles above it to kind of compensate for it. So you're in this kind of cycle of constantly compensating for a weak core, which transitions down into your hips, into your glutes, and into your back. So one of the things that you can do to address that is to train your deep core. Train with things like one of my go-to movements would be a Pallof press, because you're resisting that rotation.
Makes me hurt just thinking about it.
I love it. That's usually one of the ways that I warm up is with a Pallof press. I do barbell rollouts. I do landmine rotations. All that fun, lovely, nasty stuff that nobody wants to do. Planks, medicine ball walkouts into a pike. Those all work those hip and core muscles. Planks are really good because it forces you to contract your entire abdominal wall. It forces you to tighten those muscles around your spine. And one of the things that people all the time miss when it comes to training core is hitting those rotational exercises, because that strengthens the back, your multifidus muscle that runs your spinal column, which helps support your spine. If you think about it, every single movement that you do is core related. So if I'm doing a barbell curl, I have to brace. I have to hold myself upright with my core to initiate that lifting with the barbell to do a curl. Hands down. If you're doing a squat, you have to brace with your core to hold your upper body upright. And anytime that you're doing any of those movements and you have a weak core, it translates over into a weak lift.
Yeah. That's why that's one reason, like, a lot of the time when you're in your middle closer to heavyweight classes at a strongman competition, with those guys you can kind of tell who's going to finish where in the field by how thick they are in their midsection, because you've got to have a big, thick, strong core to do what any strongman does, especially if you're a heavyweight. Jesus. And like, it's a telltale sign every time of you don't train core. You're just fat and you don't train core. Like, your presses, your hips are all over the place. You go to lock out, and your hips are shooting one way or another. You can't carry. It's everything. Standing up, deadlifting, squatting, sitting properly. Like, I've always had a problem with my lower core, and my right hip always comes out of place from prior injuries and stuff. So I'm constantly fighting core issues, and your sitting posture is affected so much by it. It's insane. Like, people don't realize how much your core translates into everyday life.
So one of
everything.
One of the great movements that you can do without getting down on the floor, and this is something that I do constantly and is missing in a lot of lifters training programs, is the farmer's carry. That will find any and every single weak point that you have, and it will hammer it out. And so some of the ways that you can do that is, so I use either dumbbells or plates, and I've got 45-pound plates that I walk up and down my driveway. I've got a 300-foot driveway that goes downhill, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks. So doing that longer distance, you're forcing your body to hold that weight. You're standing straight. You're bracing with your core, and you're getting that good tension throughout your core. But the way that you can alter that is you can adjust the load. So you can have a heavy weight on one side and a lighter weight on the other to force your body to compensate and pull or not rotate on the lighter side. Yeah. So you get the anti-rotational in there, which again, another good one is the Landmine Rotation. What I'll do is I'll get some links and I'll send it out to you guys, and maybe we can get it put up on the landing zone.
Absolutely, we'll get that on there.
but a landmine rotation is great because you're automatically putting your core into tension, and then you're adding the rotation onto that with the landmine rotation.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, it hammers your obliques, it hammers your lower abdomen. I mean, it hits everything, and it sucks.
Every core workout.
And so you guys know too, Coach Jason Livingston, he does have one of his deep core training programs on the landing zone. So when you have time, definitely check that out. That's a program that's already helped a lot of veterans that we've gotten it to. And
I'm currently working on a follow-up to that one as well, to hit more of the glutes and the hip area. So one of the things that I've actually started doing is a kneeling squat and a banded hip thrust. It's an absolute brutal combination. So a kneeling squat is exactly that. It's squatting from a kneeling position, and it puts more emphasis on your quad and on your glutes. And then you follow that up with a superset with a kneeling banded hip thrust. And I'm telling you that really just, it hits your glutes like none other. And then, so what I'll do is I'll do about 3 to 4 sets of that individually, superset together, and then I'll do them together. So I do a banded hip thrust with a kneeling squat. And I'm telling you that just hits your quads, it hits your hamstrings, and it just nails your glutes. It hurts. It sucks. But I'm going on 9 years post injury, and I've been dealing with chronic low back pain for those 9 years, and this is the first year that I've ever been relatively pain free, and it's because I've addressed those core issues. I've addressed those hip weaknesses, glute weaknesses, and it's been phenomenal.
Absolutely. Hey, so before we get out of here today, we have one more question that we want to answer for Ernest Miller. We're going to jump back to nutrition for just a second. So Ernest is asking, how do ketogenic dieters recover? So we mentioned before that you post workout you need that protein and you need carbs to get into a good recovery phase from your workout. However, when you're on a keto diet, carbs are a no-go. So Ernest is asking, how do ketogenic dieters recover in that aspect then?
In that aspect, as far as keto goes, you're using fat as your energy source. So you're swapping your carbohydrates with your fat. Now you do get some carbohydrates on a keto diet. I did keto for a short amount of time. I had issues with sleep on keto, just because of my injuries and things that I've had. It created insomnia. So I made the choice for myself that sleep was more important than being on a keto diet.
Yeah.
So you do get some carbohydrates on a keto diet. It's usually it's about 20 grams or less. So that's where that nutritional timing comes into play, and you can have your carbohydrates post workout with your fat source and a little bit of protein. So it's all about nutritional timing in that aspect. So again, keto, you're just swapping your energy source from fat or from carbohydrates to fat. So
yeah, high fat, high protein, and very little carbs. So, well, I think that answered that question about 1,000 times better than I could have ever answered it, because I don't know much about keto. So
yeah, I had really good initial success with keto. Again, one of the side effects that you get from a keto diet is you get like the keto flu and all that stuff, and you can get insomnia, which usually lasts for maybe a day or two, and you adjust where your fat falls into the keto diet before bed. I tried adjusting it, but I've had so many issues with sleep throughout the years that it just kept going and kept going. And I was like a week and a half, 2 weeks into just staying up. I mean, I was getting like maybe an hour a day. And, I was like, this is nuts. This is crazy. Sleep is far more valuable than, trying to maintain a diet like that.
Yeah.
So I took myself off of keto, which helped, alleviate the insomnia. So it's things like that where you have to take a look and reevaluate your goals and your priorities, which is something that I know that we discussed last week, which is kind of, I guess, kind of getting back on that tough love kind of mentality. Is if you want to make a change, you have to make that sacrifice. You have to stop doing some of those behaviors, because what you're doing right now isn't working for you. And what I was doing at the time, whenever I came in to catch a lift, absolutely wasn't working for me. I was getting fatter. I was getting unhealthier. I was just hating life.
Yeah.
So you have to remove yourself from that, and you have to make the decision. You have to
got to be brutally honest.
It is. And I think, Jason and Tyler, wouldn't you guys agree? It's a decision you make every day. It's not just one day you decide. It's a conscious decision you make every day, and sometimes multiple times in that day.
Yeah, for sure. That's what makes it so damn hard.
Yeah.
Like it's not just that. It's not just a hard decision once.
Yep.
It's a hard decision every fucking day you wake up and you're like, man, I would really, just like to stay in bed and not get up, not eat, or get up and eat pancakes and syrup. And, like my favorite cereal is Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I could sit down and literally just pour milk in the box and eat it out of the box. But like when you're making a life change, especially if you're in a position where you're up against the wall and I've got to do this or I'm gonna die, in 5 or 10 years. It's a decision you got to make every single day, and like you said, multiple times a day. Sometimes that's what makes it so damn hard, and that's just keeping on pushing through that.
And that's something that I've seen with. Again, this is going back to PTSD and TBI and those things that we deal with as a veteran community. Emotional eating, bad habits, smoking, drinking, for some veterans, it even goes to, drugs, things like that. And I can only say from my personal, experience and standpoint, emotional eating was horrible for me, because I can remember sitting there in the wheelchair and I could just feel how unhealthy I was. I was literally waiting for myself to have a heart attack and die. And I've seen a lot of other veterans that were very young have things like stroke, diabetes, heart attacks, because they have an unhealthy lifestyle. So you have to make those decisions to make yourself get healthy. And, it's one step at a time. It's one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 minute at a time, where you actually just make it to the next minute without, having a drink or having a cigarette or, drugs or, whatever it is. It's minute by minute. And eventually it will come to a point where you've established a positive habit.
Yeah.
And that's what Catch Lift has been for me. Is, there's been times where PTSD for me has always been a struggle. And, I would get up in the middle of the night, still be asleep, and I'd wake my wife up and tell her that we're getting ready to go out on patrol. My wife's family low crawling across the floor before. And that's what Catch Lift has done. It's given me that positive outlet. It's given me that minute by minute where I know that I can come and I can lift. And, I can, get my head right. I can get back into it. And I mean, that has absolutely saved me from my worst self, basically. So
I think that's probably the best way you can put it right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is a positive outlet. And I think with that, I think we're going to get out of here for this week, guys. So that is it for this week on the Coach's Corner. Next week, we'll be back with another catch lift coach, Marine Corps veteran Julian Torres. Really interesting fella. So please tune back in next week. Hang out with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Tyler. Remember, you guys, Cal Coach's Corner is not a one-way conversation. We welcome your guys' feedbacks. Feel free to email us at coachescorner@catchaliftfun.com. Also, you can always leave comments on our show's posts on YouTube or Instagram page. Any veteran members that are on with us today, drop your name in that comment box if you'd like to join us and come on and talk with Tyler, Jason, and I for a little bit. Open forum discussion here. Just leave your name and we'll send you the link. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week, and we thank you.
We'd like to thank everybody who's helped put this together from Catch a Lift. We want to thank you, Jason, for being on this week and all the information and knowledge you brought. This is definitely a dense episode this week. So thank you, Lynn Coughlin, for letting us put all this together. Thank you, Henry, for being in the background and running the producer end of the show. Huge thanks to ID Technologies for everything that they do and their ongoing support for Catch a Lift and the veterans that we go out there to help. Please tune in next week. Keep watching. Share the links out there from the old shows. The more viewership we get on this, the bigger following we get, the more the word gets out there, the more veterans will be brought to Catch Lift, and the more we can help. We answer questions every week, so please feel free to ask them. You can even email in questions. We'll have them preloaded to be thrown at you the whole episode. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Above all, thanks for supporting Catch a Lift.
Stay Cal strong.